everybody. My name's Shannon. I'm going to be your host this evening. Thanks all for coming out and supporting our local authors and our local bookstores. If you haven't already, I would like you to ask you to silence your cell phones right now. We don't want to be interrupted. In a second. So we're going to hear from 3 authors tonight. Our first one is Susan Schorn. Susan is a writer, a martial artist, and a self-defense advocate. She lives in Austin, Texas with her husband and 2 children, and trains and teaches at Sundragon Martial Arts and Self-Defense. She writes Bitchslap, a column about women and fighting for McSweeney's Internet Tendencies. Her first book, Smile at Strangers, Lessons in the Art of Living Fearlessly, was published by Houghton Mifflin Harcourt in May 2013. So please welcome Susan.
I'm the warm-up act. Apparently I'm the only one who's not reading from Jason's book today. And I had been working on a different book for a month, and then I foolishly asked my friends on Facebook if they'd rather hear from that book or this other one that I had just started, and they all wanted to hear from this one. So you get to hear the new work, which is purportedly a thriller, we'll see how that works, called Heart of Fire. And this is a really different perspective being on this side of the podium, because you're all wondering what I'm going to read to you, and I'm thinking, if this goes badly, how would I fight my way out of this situation? I'm in a corner. So, work in progress, that's all I'm going to say. And the work's called Heart of Fire. It was late September, and it should have been cooler. Normally, I don't complain about hot weather. When you've walked into a warehouse fire in full turnout gear, your tolerances are set pretty high, but today I was wearing a suit. I needed to look respectable, and sweat didn't help. The 9th floor office I'd come to wasn't a place you could sweat in. It was chilly and quiet, and everything in it, the carpet, the pictures, the furniture, looked expensive. The flawlessly dressed receptionist probably ate shredded 20s for lunch like salad. I gave her my name, and she ushered me across the waiting room. "You're 10 o'clock, Mrs. Logan," she said, and pointed me through a door toward a buttery-looking chair in front of a large desk and a small woman. Then she closed the door discreetly. I sat down and tried to look discreet myself. "You're Mr. Angel?" said the woman on the other side of the desk. "Carmichael. James Carmichael?" "That's right." She didn't seem to hear the correction. Her head was bent over a stack of papers clipped neatly together. "I understand you heard about this job from Alexander Riesco at the 23rd Street Gym." "That's right." She peered up at me over the tops of her eyeglasses. I guessed she was in her 60s, but her eyes seemed to have reached adolescence and then refused to budge. "What did Alex tell you about the position?" she asked. "He hadn't told me much. You looking for work?" he said one night while I was wrapping my hands. Rewrapping them, to be precise. I'd bound them so tightly in the locker room that my fingers started to throb before I threw a single punch. "What kind of work?" I asked, even though we both knew I needed any kind. "Personal assistant," he said, as he watched me tug the strips of blood-stained cloth tape over my knuckles. "You know, you should wash those once in a while." I shrugged. "Who's hiring?" "Older woman I know, has a consulting business, sometimes travels places her kids think aren't very safe." "Babysitting a little old lady?" Alex spat noncommittally in the corner. "You might find it interesting. Probably pays okay. Office is on 5th Avenue up by the Frick." I'd shrugged again, and he'd written a phone number and a name on a piece of paper, Elaine Logan. I slipped it into my shoe while my fingers were still free, and forgot about it until I got home, when it fluttered out on my bedroom floor. I left it there while I took a shower and ate something from the freezer that came wrapped in plastic but tasted like cardboard. I could remember when working out used to make me hungry. Now it just gave me a spiteful satisfaction because I knew the directors of my anger management program didn't like me doing it. They wanted me to run or swim or do yoga, not hit things. I tossed the wadded up plastic wrapper from dinner at the trash can, and when it missed and rolled across the kitchen floor, I didn't bother to pick it up. Leaving stuff lying around was one of the few pleasures I had left since Kari moved out. She couldn't stand a mess. Now the apartment was a labyrinth of stiffening laundry, jumbled takeout containers, bottle caps. My gym bag with the blood-stained hand wraps lay by the front door where I dropped it. Mail covered the living room floor, including some bills that were starting to mutter darkly to each other in a way that was hard to ignore. I could imagine them adding up all the numbers inside themselves like gossipy neighbors. So the next morning, I picked up the piece of paper Alex had given me and called Mrs. Logan. And now I was sitting in her high-priced office trying to explain what I thought I might do if I worked for her. Alex said you had a consulting business, that you want an assistant to help out when you travel. Which is not untrue, she said, after weighing this description for a long moment. I'm not really the secretary type, I went on. I figured that was obvious. I guess Alex thought you were looking for someone who could be useful with things like luggage and making sure you're not bothered by people. The luggage handling would be useful, Mrs. Logan acknowledged. I'm not young anymore, and airports aren't getting any smaller, heaven knows. I am, however, rarely bothered by people. Well, that was a quick interview, I thought. Put on a suit for nothing. I took the liberty of calling Alex to find out a little more about you, Mr. Carmichael. I hope you don't mind. I did, but I was in no position to argue. Most of the embarrassing stuff was a matter of public record anyway. I also did some research into your work history, she continued, sliding the paperclip off the stack in front of her and pulling out one page. 7 years with the New York City Fire Department, senior firefighter, in line for lieutenant. On administrative leave since March, is that right? Yeah. The buttery chair I was sitting in was suddenly very uncomfortable. Would you like to tell me why you're on leave? She already knew, I was certain. Alex wouldn't have held back anything about me. But the way she asked made me nervous, in a way I hadn't been when I was called in to see my company commander, or when I was interviewed by the detectives, or even when I went in for psychiatric evaluation. This lady reminded me of a teacher I'd had in grade school. What was her name? Mrs. Bellamy, 3rd grade. She wore her glasses on a chain around her neck, and she smelled like wintergreen. We were all terrified of her. My wife had an affair with another firefighter, I blurted out. You're currently separated? Divorcing, I clarified. That's not why you're on leave, though, is it? The truth was, I wasn't just on leave. I was being terminated as quickly and quietly as the union would allow, and if she talked to anyone in the department, she knew that, too. No. I had an altercation with the guy she was sleeping with. I see. And what happened during that altercation? Well, I broke his jaw. She nodded, her face registering polite interest. His jaw? And his nose. Still she waited. And I busted out a couple of his teeth. And he was in the hospital for how long? About 2 weeks. She picked up a silver letter opener and tapped it thoughtfully against the edge of the desk, looking past me to the far side of her office. I watched her, feeling the sweat oozing through the back of my shirt, and saw her casually reverse the letter opener in her hand and pass the hilt through her fingers like a conjurer manipulating a coin. Back and forth, again and again, the blade dancing harmlessly, almost faster than I could see. It was the kind of thing you learn to do in the Israeli military, or prison. Tell me, Mr. Carmichael, do you think what you did was wrong? In my mind's eye, I saw Mrs. Bellamy fiddling with her glasses on the end of their chain. I shouldn't have done it, I said. She halted the letter opener in mid-twirl and regarded me like a Russian chess master who has just put his hapless American opponent in check. That's not the same thing, she said. Well, I said, taking a deep breath the way they taught us in anger management class. No, Mrs. Logan, I don't think it was wrong. I understand it was illegal. I had no right to bust the little shit up, pardon my language, the way I did. But believe me, I had every reason to. I looked into the weirdly young eyes across the desk and waited. Mrs. Logan smiled. Then she pulled another piece of paper from her stack and slid it across the desktop. I think you might be a good fit for this job, Mr. Carmichael, she said. If you're interested in pursuing the opportunity, I'll need you to sign this form. I looked at the paper. It was a disclaimer and medical release. Would it be too much trouble to ask what exactly the job is before I sign anything? Not at all. As Alex told you, I run a consulting business. I do travel quite a bit. Recently, I had hip surgery, and my children demanded I hire an assistant. You see, Mr. Carmichael, I sometimes go to dangerous places and meet dangerous people. I have always been quite capable of protecting myself under those circumstances, but I don't want my children to worry. So, while you would not officially be a bodyguard, it wouldn't hurt to let my children think you were. She set the letter opener down on her desk. Alex assured me you were a good choice. I trust Alex. You know Alex pretty well, I asked, unable to restrain my curiosity. She wasn't the kind of woman I associated with Alex. Alex had been a low-stakes prize fighter when he was young, and he looked as if he'd been left on a shelf in a pawn shop for a couple of decades afterwards. Goodness, yes, Mrs. Logan said. I dislocated his shoulder once. Of course, she went on, that was before I was married. I might have been imagining it, but I think she blushed. Also, you're wearing a very nice suit, she remarked. I think that says a lot about a man. It was a nice suit. Kari had picked it out for me, and I hadn't gotten around to burning it yet. I signed the form. Now, James, this is what I want you to do, and I want you to do exactly as I tell you. We were in a dark, anonymous Chrysler that Mrs. Logan had led me to in the parking garage of her office building. Under her direction, I'd driven it across the East River and then followed her commands of next right and left here, finally parking on a side street in the bowels of Brooklyn. Wait until I'm around the corner, then give me 60 seconds, she told me. Then get out of the car and follow me, but not closely. Don't give any indication that you know me. When you hear me say police, dial 911 on your phone. No matter what you see, do not dial that number until I say police. Don't approach me before then, don't speak to me, don't interfere in any way. Understand? What do I say to the dispatcher, I asked. Just report what you see, all right? You're the boss, I told her. I like your attitude. She reached behind the seat and fished out a heavy black cane. Then she opened the car door and appeared to develop a sudden crippling case of arthritis. I watched her totter onto the sidewalk and around the corner. As soon as she was out of sight, I followed, my phone in my hand. I stood behind the edge of the building and counted to 60, hoping I might hear something while I waited. Nothing. I stepped around. It was a dingy street, untouched by the golden hand of gentrification. Not much foot traffic, and I spotted the purse snatcher while he was still half a block away. He looked nonchalant, but he had a hunch to his shoulders that I recognized from the gym. He was a man ready to move. Mrs. Logan crept painfully down the sidewalk, leaning on the cane. Her purse hung from her left hand, low to the ground, a trout lure wielded by an expert angler. I punched in 911 on my phone, my thumb hovering over the call button. The mugger picked up speed a couple of steps from his target. Didn't look at her, he was smooth. Only his hand swooped down as he passed, caught the purse strap, and gave a vicious tug. It would have bowled Mrs. Logan right over if she'd been a normal old lady. She wasn't. She spun with the tug, and as she did, her cane moved in a way that I couldn't quite follow, fast, like the letter opener. The mugger fell, heavily, and Mrs. Logan gave a little scream, and the mugger screamed too, a lot louder. Then Mrs. Logan yelled, "Police!" and I punched call on my phone and sprinted down the sidewalk toward them. By the time I got there, a couple of heads had popped out of doors. A cab pulled over, and the driver got out. 911, said a voice on my phone. I'm calling from Dumont Avenue, the intersection with Sheffield by the dry cleaners, I said. An old lady just got mugged. The guy who did it is still here. And someone's hurt. You better send an ambulance. Yes, sir. Please stay on the line. I hung up. Mrs. Logan was breathing heavily, clutching her purse with one hand and her chest with the other. Her cane lay on the sidewalk. I should have said there's some bad language in here. I hope that's okay. The pitch broke my wrist, the mugger was saying loudly to no one in particular. He sat on the sidewalk, cradling his left hand. Hey, buddy, I saw you grab her purse, the cab driver said. You okay, lady? Am I? Yes, I think so, Mrs. Logan gasped. He was taking my purse from me. My wrist, the mugger persisted. Look at my fucking wrist. His wrist looked like hell. The hand jutted out sideways from his forearm. That would be a tough one to splint, I thought. The medics might not even bother. Oh dear, Mrs. Logan murmured, peering at the mangled limb. You must have fallen on it. Bullshit, the mugger yelled. You broke it with that fucking cane. My cane? Mrs. Logan asked vaguely, looking around her. Where is my cane? I picked it up from the sidewalk and handed it to her. Thank you, young man, she said, as a squad car pulled up and two officers emerged. They took a quick scan of our little group and broke into smiles. Ominous smiles. Well, if it isn't Charlie, one of them said, strolling over to the mugger. Fuck, the mugger said. What happened to your wrist, Charlie? The second cop asked. She fucking broke it, the mugger snarled, gesturing at Mrs. Logan with his chin. I was just walking along and this crazy old lady grabs my hand. That's not true, I broke in. He grabbed her purse. I saw it. Me too, the cab driver put in. The owner of the bodega behind us had stepped out the door. I saw it too, he volunteered. We've had a lot of purse snatchings in this neighborhood. So we've heard, the first cop said. In fact, we've been wanting to talk to Charlie. We found his fingerprints on a purse that someone grabbed last week and then threw away in an alley. A little old lady's purse. She broke her collarbone when the mugger knocked her down. Fuck you, I ain't talking, Charlie said. Suit yourself, the cop told him amiably. They called another squad car to take Charlie away since they couldn't put cuffs on his shattered wrist. Mrs. Logan hadn't told me not to give my real name, so I did. She told the cops her name was Mary Mancuso, that she'd been in Brownsville visiting a friend, and that she lived at 972 West 47th Street. You know this guy? The cop asked her, pointing at me with his pen. She goggled at me like an overwhelmed child. I never saw him before today. When it was all over, they put Mrs. Logan in a cab and told the driver to go to 47th, but by the time I'd gotten back to her car, she texted my phone. Meet me at the office. Card for parking garages in the glove box. You handled that very well, James, she said when we were back in our former places across her desk. You followed directions and you didn't try to improvise. I didn't lie to the cops either, I said pointedly. Did I? I never have seen you before today. Who's Mary Mancuso and who lives at 972 West 47th Street? There's a Mary Mariano at 729 West 47th Street and a Terry Mancuso at 792 East 47th Street, she said. That was a good find. I'll have to have Rochelle dig up another one. I decided Rochelle must be the expensive receptionist. How did you know he was there? You don't need to know that, and I won't tell you, Mrs. Logan replied. She straightened the collar of her blouse. I make no pretense at being a nice person, Mr. Carmichael. I am not. I am, however, at peace with what I do. In this office, integrity is paramount. Scruples I have no use for. If you work for me, you'll need to leave them at home. Do you still want the job? Does the job consist of holding the phone while you kneecap muggers? She waved a hand dismissively. That wasn't the job. That was the interview. I'm pretty sure it was illegal. Was it wrong? If you think so, then turn me in. The arresting officer's name was Peterson. Call him. I didn't. The actual job will be much more interesting, I promise. It pays $8,000 a month, plus travel expenses and health benefits, and will insure your life in the amount of $3 million. $3 million? Still hadn't processed the $8,000 a month. Does that seem reasonable? I'd rather have the cash equivalent. It wouldn't amount to much. Term life insurance is relatively inexpensive. Yeah, but if I die before my divorce is finalized, my wife will get the money. Not necessarily. You can designate any beneficiary you like. I don't have anyone else to leave it to. I see, she said. Well, if you'll sign an affidavit declining the insurance, I think we can arrange the money. We arranged it. I walked home through the sweltering afternoon, all 50 blocks, and when I arrived, I stripped off my dripping wetsuit, put it in a laundry bag, and gathered up every piece of dirty clothing I could find in the apartment. I put the bag by the door, ready to drop off at the cleaners in the morning. Then I started picking the mail up off